and unapologetic.
There is a new African in the world. That new African is...
Welcome to Candid Africa, truthful and unapologetic.
There is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing the whole affairs. And my last warning to you is that you all should stand firm behind us so that we can prove to the world that when the African is given a chance, he can show to the world that he's somebody. We are awakening. We shall no more go back to sleep anymore. We are going to demonstrate to the world, to the other nations, young as we are, that we are prepared to lay our own foundation. As I said in the assembly just minutes ago, I made a point that we are going to say that we create our own African personality and identity. It's the only way in which we can show the world that we are ready for our own battle. But today, may I call upon you all that at this great day, let us all remember that nothing in the world can be done unless it has the purported support of God. We have done the battle, and we again rededicate ourselves not only in the struggle to emancipate other territories in Africa. Our independence is meaningless unless it is linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. And here, I will ask the band to play the Ghana national anthem.
The Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
These are the voices of New Africa. These are the voices of New Africa. These are the voices of New Africa. Free in the land, and we ain't asking y'all.
Welcome to another episode of the Voices of New Afrika, the show where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. I'm your host, Brother Prophecy. Ride with me, I got my comrade Kayi and my elder grandmaster teacher for Dolly. How y'all doing, man? It's good to be on the show today. Definitely. We open the show up with a speech from our great ancestor. Comrades that came on. Our great ancestor, Kwame Nkrumah, and that just kind of sets the stage for the show because we want to deal with an international enemy. We want to let everybody know that the same enemy that we battle here in the United States of America, we battle all over the world. The same oppressors that we deal with are the same oppressors that have oppressed the entire world. And I wanted to bring you into the conversation, Grandmaster Teacher. Let me fix my mic. Well, how you doing, Grandmaster Teacher?
Doing as great as we can, and under imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism. And that was a great speaker, Kwame Nkrumah, who said that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless the whole of Africa and African people throughout are free and united. And this is very important that we begin to look at the writings of people like Marcus Garvey, Kwame Nkrumah, so that we can get direction in terms of what we are trying to do today. And we have to begin to, because these speakers also have writings. Marcus Garvey, wife compiled the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey, which showed, what Marcus Garvey expanse of his speeches and talked about Africa for the Africans at home and abroad. And Nkrumah said that Philosophy and Opinion was one of the greatest books that he had read, that was put together. And Nkrumah became a Garveyite in terms of when he moved to Pan-Africanism at the Fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester, England, in the 1940s, and then led his country to independence, but understanding that these enemies are still in existence and really created neo-colonialism. And there's a book called Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism by Nkrumah, written in 1965, a year before he was got overthrown by the United States CIA. And matter of fact, he in his introduction preface, he was warning Lyndon Johnson now not to interfere with him when he was on his mission for peace, going to Vietnam and went through China. But by the time he got to China, he was overthrown by the United States government under the CIA direction. And these are the kind of things we have to understand, that everywhere we are, that we are organizing our people for statehood. And Ghana was in 1957, the first African state below the so-called Sahara that got its independence from Britain. But neo-colonialism began to take its edge, and by the time that they overthrew him, neo-colonialism triumphed, and we have black faces that are acting on behalf of white power in all the African countries, and even throughout the African world. Even here in the United States, we are suffering from neo-colonialism, and we see it in these black mayors and even the so-called black president, Obama, and all those. It shows you the example of what we call neo-colonialism. We are under a colonial system, and we are living in a settler colony called the United States that has put the native people, have exterminated and many of the native people, and have put them on so-called reservations. But at the same time, we are suffering under this settler colony, under neo-colonialism. And we got to begin to understand that, begin to study the writings of these people, such as Garvey and Nkrumah. Malcolm X, had the speeches of Malcolm X. You should get a copy of the speeches of Malcolm X. It's called Malcolm X Speaks, and to see what our leaders were talking about in terms of we're talking about nationalism and Pan-Africanism are the goals of any liberation movement. And so when understand that nationalism is not a philosophy, it is the setup of a nation for us as a people, and to be able to gain the power that we must have over our own life. But we are linked all together. And so when we talk about organizing our independent African state in America, we call ourselves New Africans. And when we say New Africans, it has been extended to all the Africans in the Western Hemisphere in particular, that we must
to break off from the colonial system set up by the Europeans throughout the world for their control under the capitalist system. And the writings of our leaders of those times would also lead us to socialism.
Understand what socialism is.
No, you good. Your mic had turned off for a second, but that's okay. So it's a lot that's been going on globally, especially in terms of rebellions against this system. We talked about a lot of things that have been happening recently in our radio broadcast. Could you kind of bring that, enlighten us, bring us up to speed to what's going on, especially on the continent? A lot of things going on on the continent is rebelling against these systems of oppression and exploitation. If you could, enlighten us on that.
Yes. Okay. So let me say this. there's been a lot of attention to here in the United States around white.
Hold on, just a second. For some reason, your mic is not going on. Try to unmute his mic if you can, comrade. But yeah, this is the Voices of New Afrika, where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. If you are out there and y'all listening to tuning in, make sure y'all drop a line, drop a comment, let us know who you are so we can collectively. That's good. Dang, I hope you just hit it again. Nah, you just turned it off again. You was good. You got to hit it again because you turned it off. But yeah, drop a line. There you go. Let us know what's going on. Let us know what's going on, who you are, so we can converse with you. But you can continue, comrade.
Okay, so Africa, throughout the world, we are suffering everywhere, and not just here in the United States, where we had instances of black shooting of blacks in Jacksonville, Florida, and all the other things that's dealing with us in terms of our culture. And this is why we must begin to link up and understand, because the same thing is happening in Niger, which is in Northwest Africa, which is a state that was a French colony. And just a couple of days ago, Gabon is a West African country that was also ruled by France at one time. They're a neo-colonial state. They have been still utilized by the Europeans and the United States to take out the resources of Africa. And we got to see where, we understand the people are rising up in these places. And Gabon, and a couple of days ago, the family that has ruled Gabon was overthrown by the mass of people in the military has taken over. And the same thing has happened in Niger, where the United States has 1,100 troops there, and France has been basically kicked out. France has been kicked out of West Africa and North Africa in states such as the Central African Republic, the Casino Sasa, Mali, and Niger. Niger. Sometimes we said Niger. More of us look because it's spelled Niger, and it's like the Niger River, So, but in the French pronunciation, it was called Niger. And so what we see is link up, and then I want to talk too about South Africa. 74 people burned up in a building that was abandoned building in South Africa. South Africa is a rich country. It's like one of the richest countries in the world, like the Congo and other places. And we see that our people are starving in South Africa. In Niger, our people were starving, even though it has a rich uranium, deposit, and other gold and diamond. All these places have gold and diamonds and whatever mineral you want to think of, and they're still being run outside their countries by the former so-called mother country or the United States. And the United States has become a component of in the so-called war against the so-called Arab rebellion in northern Africa, and the Al Qaeda. They want everything is Al Qaeda. So the United States has drone operations coming out of Niger and coming out of other areas of Africa, and been dropping bombs on Somalia and Mali and those places in the guise of so-called trying to follow the Al Qaeda elements that were supposed to be dealt with in terms of Afghanistan. Afghanistan, the United States was defeated; they had to leave. So these elements are beginning to come together and are kicking out France. Burkina Faso and Mali have basically, joined in with Niger in terms of, and Gabon, I guess, is going to join because the African Union, which is should be called the African Disunion, because they want to maintain neo-colonialism. They don't want these corrupt neo-colonial leaders to be kicked out of their countries. And so, and the African Union has a resolution that says, they can't interfere, but now they're interfering on the behalf of the European countries, trying to return these people to power, so that our people can continue to starve, and so the Europeans and the United States can continue to take our resources out of Africa. And when we look at here in America,
we are a colonial, colonized nation, and we are under neo-colonialism.
Come on, let me interrupt real quick. Just got one because you might just kind of fell out.
Thank you.
But no, this is all good. But no, I mean, because you brought up a lot of very important things. One, you talked about how South Africa, although it's one of the richest nations anywhere, you just had like over 70 people perished in a fire because they were living in an abandoned building because they were like impoverished. And how could you have so much poverty within a nation with so much wealth? And that's kind of at the heart of it, because Africa is not poor. You have this idea, this perception of Africa being impoverished, but Africa is not poor. The people of Africa are poor. And the people of Africa are poor because of, like you said, they have been colonized by European and Western powers that are there to exploit the riches and the resources. And this is the same thing that has happened to us, because we are a nation within the United States who are colonized by the United States of America. We're an oppressed nation, and they're here to exploit us. And we've been exploited for over 400 or 500 years within this country alone. So it's like the same oppressor, the same system that is oppressing us is oppressing, this whole globe. It's a global oppression, a global system of capitalism and exploitation. And as you talked about earlier, just getting white people to like us is not going to solve the problem. It's not going to even address the problem, really, because that is not the problem. That's simply a byproduct of the problem. And until we concretely address this system of exploitation and get rid of this system of oppression, then we're still gonna get the same results. And Kakai, I know you've been real quiet. I ain't heard from you, lately, but how you doing, comrade?
I'm high in spirits and full of pep. I hope my voice is being heard. Yeah. So. There's a lot we've covered. I think that at this point, I would refrain from giving more detailed information. I mean, we've given it all. The line of thinking, our perspective, our ideology and philosophy needs to be honed in. When it comes to dealing with these blonde-haired, blue-eyed devils, one of their tactics is bringing a lot of information, making it chaotic, making you confused, because you have to apply the teachings that they've given you to understand what is going on. Just like the fire in South Africa, they have systematically, that's why we say it's against the system, they have systematically programmed us to believe in the programs, the systems, the media that they control, so that you can put credence on the information that they gave you, because you should automatically believe it. We've had people like Amos Wilson, who wrote about relinquishing Black power, relinquishing power to the authorities. We can go on and on. But when you look at their media, they'll tell you that it was 74, 73 people killed, but they won't give it to you in actual. The way it really was a slumlord that was a white person out of South Africa that made sure that people who was in their country illegally paid them to live somewhere that they can feel comfortable and not say anything to anybody because they might get deported. That's the real issue. But when you look at the media, they'll tell you, their media will tell you it was 73 squatters. in an abandoned building. And because of your teaching, upbringing, and brainwashing through the educational system, and I'm just saying how it is, we tend to believe it's 73 squatters in an abandoned building, when in actuality it was the complete opposite. So let me just say this. In order to summarize how we should look at things, we have to understand our perspective. First of all, we're against an enemy that is attacking us globally, while at the same time convincing us through the educational system that we're not connected. I have nothing to do with the people in Gabon. I have nothing to do with the people in Niger. I have nothing to do with the people in Sierra Leone. I have nothing to do with the people in South Memphis, let alone somewhere in Africa, because of the educational system. So we have to start thinking, wait, first of all, these are created. They have bamboozled, hoodwinked, and led us astray for many years. They have revealed who they were the first time. And I'm just taking quotes from our leaders, Malcolm X. They've hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led us astray. I'm taking facts from our leaders, Maya Angelou. When they show you who you are the first time, believe them. These people are attacking us globally. And these people do not want us to understand the importance of controlling our own land, having our own independent sovereign nation, governing ourselves, having our own economic system, so we can practice self-determination and be self-sufficient. So we have to take one bite at a time. Do you know the importance of us in the United States, the Africans in the United States, who have decided that they have declared their independence since 1968, and we have declared our nation as being the Republic of New Afrika, and we have a provisional government of the Republic of New Afrika that will embody us, supporting ourselves collectively to start to be the catalyst of a global change where Africans around the world, through Pan-Africanism, will be collective, will be together, will be the entity in which everyone aspires to be. Because you have to remember, we explored and located all aspects of the globe before the white man came. They, in essence, enhanced our ability to have condensed population in many different areas, but we were already here. Their major downfall with slavery is that they didn't realize that someday we would wake up, and the fact that they had assisted us in spreading our population worldwide would be their demise in the future, because that's what it is. They're concerned about us getting ourselves together here in the United States, because we'll set a trend to the motherland of Africa. And when the motherland of Africa begins to control their practice self-determination and having real, true freedom and independence, then it'll spread back over to the Western Hemisphere through all the Caribbean nations and whatever. But we're around the world. And in the moment we begin to show ourselves the power that we have as new Africans in the United States, then we'll begin to spread that energy worldwide, and it'll become the demise of white folks. They know this. That's why they don't want us to understand the importance of being a collective body.
I want bring up teacher to go jump in real quick.
Yes. So when we talk about organizing ourselves throughout the world, that because we got to understand this, when we had Nkrumah to talk about Ghana, one by one, if we get your independence, it does not mean that we're going to have our freedom of Pan-Africanism. So therefore, that's why we in America, in the United States, of so-called United States of America, we said the United States of America, we have always been a part of the international. That's why Malcolm said we must become international in our outlook and in our operation. And so therefore we have always been a part of the African world. As a matter of fact, Pan-Africanism started from when the first slave was taken, by the Spanish and the Portuguese. Yeah, and so therefore it was born an international movement. Pan-Africanism was, and so and in different areas of the world we have challenged the capitalist system, because you got to understand that we're talking about an economic system, a world white supremacist capitalist system that controls all the resources of the world, and had made the United States the American empire that it is, but they're all in concert in terms of how they operate toward us. They do know, that ultimately all empires end, and that the people will rise up. They do know. That's why they're doing everything they can to split us up into all different kinds of nations and stuff like that. Not understand that we are one African nation, actually. That we and in the Western Hemisphere, we are the new African portion of that, because we had to survive without our support of our African country. At the time that they brought us over here, it weakened Africa, and they were able to go back in and take over the whole of Africa. And so that's why Garvey is so important, because Garvey became the first African speaker, that talked to the people, that organized, not talk to power. He was talking to the people to organize ourselves so that we can, extend our rights internationally and understanding. And so by that token, we can see how what they did to disrupt and to diseducate our people to a point of where they don't know that we don't know our history. That's why we always said, and Brother Amir Khan Cabral said, we must understand ourselves, understand our enemies, and build a plan based on reality. And so the struggle against colonialism took part in small states, because they created the small states in the first place, so that they wouldn't be not able to do what China has done. China is one solid, nation that has international power automatically when it was able to throw out the Europeans, and we Africans have done all we could to throw out for the Europeans, but the Europeans have managed to create a class of people that are willing to allow the system to continue as it had in the past. And so therefore, that is why we focus on Niger and Gabon and South Africa to show that it's only when we all come together, and with that analysis, neo-colonialism is, and to the point of where
Mike went out.
It went out. Okay, go ahead.
No, it's okay. But no, with that, because you talked about a lot, and you ended up talking about a class of people who will allow, a class of people from amongst the people who will allow the power structure to continue to exist, mainly because they've managed to put themselves in a situation where they get some benefit from the current situation at the detriment of their own people. And I think, when we look at the class from the proletarian to the petty bourgeoisie, I think that's one reason why it's really important that we gain control over our educational system, because the educational system really programs and indoctrinates us, because sometimes I think we have a misconception that well, okay, if a person has a lot of money, therefore there can never be a part of the struggle, part of the revolution. But when I look at certain revolutionaries like Che Guevara, how you say his last name? How you say Che Guevara? Guevara, yeah. This is a brother who came from a very wealthy family, very, but he had a political education on him, which allowed him to align himself with the people, and he helped use his resources to kickstart his revolution, his involvement in revolutionary struggle, and he was very instrumental in winning Cuba's independence. So that's the importance of the political education, because we judge, I think it was Sundiata Acoli, we judge our friends and our enemy not because of who their family is, or how light skinned they are, what your back, but you judge, you define your friend and enemy based on your alliance to the struggle, alliance to the people, alliance to the movement. Not on these other superficial characteristics, and we have to understand it. But that's why it is truly important that we control the education, so we can produce more individuals who are aligned with our struggle, who are aligned with the people, who align with the concept of independence. Because see, it's not an accident that you have people who are indoctrinated and identify with the bourgeoisie, even though it's not necessarily within their best interests. We can have a situation where we have individuals who are successful within this system, but still aligned and identified with our struggle. We actually need that. We need our intellectuals. We need thinkers. We need all of these people. We don't need to be divided just because, you went to college and I didn't go to college. The intellectual need to be side by side with the gangs, with the prostitutes, with the people who are in the Lumpkin class, because it's going to take all of us to make a collective effort in order to really wage a successful revolution against this system of oppression and exploitation. Because some of the people who have articulated the struggle in the most eloquent way that I've met personally are individuals. I met individuals from Harvard who went to Cuba, who witnessed, firsthand, the revolutionary spirit of Cuba, who articulated the contradictions of capitalism and the falls of capitalism, and so these are Black students from Harvard. That most people will look at like, oh no, they can't identify with our struggle. But if you have the proper political education and you align yourself with the movement, then that's how we identify, okay, these are the people who are down for us and these are the people who are not. Because you can be from the heart of the ghetto or heart of in the midst of the belly of the beast, but have still that indoctrination and there's still that programming of the system, and you don't feel any alliance with the people, and you can become a beast in the detriment of the people, practicing ghetto capitalism, hood capitalism, and exploiting the people the same way the oppressor has, and you be thinking you're going up against the system when you playing in the hands of the system, because you're neutralizing you coming a terror on your own people, and at any point in time when they want to, they can lock you up and just further feed the prison industrial complex. So like I said, you talked a lot about a lot, and I'm kind of rambling, and I'm kind of shut up right now.
I got you. We have some technical difficulties, so I kind of just jump in when the mic kind of cuts off, and you just came back on.
Right. Okay. So the class that we talk, some people are dealing with the class system, and it is a class struggle. Ultimately, under socialism, we have the elimination of classes as a basis of power in a society. So what you just talked about was people who basically have departed from their class origin, who are working to overthrow that class designation. And we must have the intellectual, and in the movements that we've had that pull us toward Black power and African power, we found that students on the college campuses were the leaders of going to the mass of people and educating the mass of people and standing up with the mass of people to organize ourselves for power. to understand what power is and what it means. And so therefore, when and so this was what they recognized. I'm talking about the enemy. Enemy forces recognized that they had to utilize by making certain concessions to get black mayors and black presidents and black, to mislead the people, to take us off our course, to understand that. So we have to begin to revitalize the intellectual forces so that we can begin to let the people know and understand what socialism is and what it means, and what scientific socialism is and what it means, and what capitalism is and what it means. And we know that one of the things that we have to keep saying, there are only really two economic systems in the world. That's capitalism, which is an oppressive system that came out of slavery, that was built itself on chattel slavery and all other kinds of slavery and all other kind of forms, and understand and made money the element of so-called wealth, that is to enslave the workers. And money became the workers became part of the money enslavement, and this is what we have today. And what we got to do is get people to understand that these classes do exist, and those who are progressive, who are revolutionary, are radical, these are the ones that we are welcoming to join our movement for liberation and for statehood and all the other things that we need to have. And so I think that's important, what you just said, that because this is how we're going to unify our people. And we are going to unify our people through organizations that are working for the people, not organizations that's working for the classes under capitalism. And understand that capitalism has enriched a small number of people, and largely they are white supremacists in terms of everything they can to separate us, to make us not want to be revolutionary. That's why we have to begin to get our people to read. That's why we got to have work study groups and stuff like that, so we can build up the forces, of nationalism and Pan-Africanism. And when we did that, every time we've been able to do that and bring certain elements of people together, we've been able to make progress in terms of the so-called statehood that we have. But all the states have become neo-colonial states, except for a handful. And you just mentioned about Che Guevara and Fidel Castro in Cuba. Cuba is one of the most progressive nations, even though it's been impoverished by the embargo, the capitalist embargo. Venezuela, under Chavez, became one of the most important nations that was moving to aid Cuba and other socialist nations with its oil. But when Chavez died, the United States, have put an embargo on Venezuela, which is one of the richest oil, countries in the world. That the people are not able, and we got people that the petty bourgeoisie from Venezuela, instead of joining the movement of the socialism in Venezuela, they are coming here to the United States, because the United States have provided protection. And even though they allow these people to come in, even like I was looking at the Afghanistan people, there were 77,000 people that came from Afghanistan, and some of them are homeless. They've come to America. They've helped Americans ravage their country. Have put Afghanistan in an impoverished state to the point of where people are starving to death in Afghanistan. Since the so-called departure of the United States from taking all the resources it could take until it got defeated by the Taliban forces. I'm not for the Taliban forces, but I am for the people of Afghanistan. And those that came over have become sorely disappointed in thinking that they were going to be enriched by moving to America. And America has showed them their butt, instead of
they have basically made them some people who are now impoverished, and just as impoverished as they were made by the United States in
And let me jump in real quick. Because you said a lot of very important things. You talked about the embargo in Cuba, and I think that's an important thing to understand. What we said, we're talking about how this enemy that we're facing in the United States is the enemy of really the entire world, and they oppress and exploit the entire world. And what happens is, if the United States or other Western powers can't get the leadership of independent sovereign countries to play ball with them, to give them access to the resources of their country, so the Western power can gain riches and be wealth like they do in Africa at the expense, and the people of that nation is suffers for it if they don't play ball. If they do the type of actions that benefit them, their people, instead of the United States or other Western powers, then they are attacked with their global economic institutions. They are attacked by embargoes and sanctions and all of these things. So if you could, kind of speak to how poverty is created. The artificial poverty that you see, especially in Cuba and these other wealthy nations, are created, and they're not indigenous to the people, and they're not even though a lot of time the revolutionary forces in that country that are anti-imperialism and anti-colonial forces get blamed for the poverty by the propaganda of the Western forces, but it's actually the doing of the CIA, the United States, the World Bank, and so on and so forth. Could you let me see if I can get you back on here.
So if we use the word, if we look at
after he comments, let me comment.
Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So what we deal with Cuba as an
example, and Cuba has a significantly large African population. And Cuba was able to, with the assistance of the Soviet Union then, to go to Angola, Che Guevara. We talked about Che Guevara and his contribution to the Cuban Revolution, but it also kept the South Africans from coming into Angola. And Angola ultimately attained its state independence, as a result of Cuban soldiers fighting, with them against the South African soldiers, the white South African soldiers. South Africa was defeated. And also Cuba had, made some assistance under Che Guevara and other parts of Africa, such as the Congo and all that. But ultimately, they assassinated. The United States assassinated Patrice Lumumba, and kept the Che Guevara from being successful in the Congo. And so ultimately, though, embargo, stops trade, stops, the ability to send your produce throughout the world, in a fashion, and have created a situation by which Cuba became impoverished. And that's why Venezuela, Chavez was coming to help, Cuba, to help, with its oil resources, so that the people, but in spite of that, the people of Cuba have free housing and free, and there's no let's say poverty on a level that we see in which the colonial powers have maintained their position in places like Niger or Gabon. You don't have that in Cuba, and you have a lot, and the educational, and Cuba are the most educated. The people of Cuba are the most educated of all the Caribbean, and that is that, because they know that socialism is the road in which we were. So, in spite of the imperialism, that's why we must have the revolutionary forces come together, and those elements come together. We can move. We can join Cuba and North Korea and Venezuela and other places that are trying to move on a socialist path, and so consequently, this is why when Malcolm X say internationalism is where we must go. We understand that our forces even though we are building where we are and we're trying to gain control over our resources where we are, we must begin to understand that it's a worldwide phenomenon because we're dealing with a worldwide oppressive system called capitalism. And anywhere that they see that there's any progress made, they're going to do everything they can to possibly do, to destroy the people's ability to trade with other peoples in the world or whatever in terms of that. That's why when we talk about in the Republic of New Afrika, then we are understanding that it's important that all of us come together economically to support all the other elements in the world that are being affected by imperialism and neo-colonialism.
Yeah, I see that you changed the mic over, host, not grandmaster teacher, prophecy. Our people have to understand some things. If you do understand them, that's great. But we have to get that information out to the people who may not be clear. Our enemy, is, and to a certain degree, have the capacity to analyze situations, solve them, and execute the solution. And so when we are being attacked a lot of times, it's because our enemy has analyzed the problem that they perceive that they're going to have with us, come up with a solution, and they execute it. Where we're falling short is that we're always responding. I'm trying to put it in a positive way. We're always responding to their attacks. And when we keep ourselves in a position where we're responding to their attacks, we're already too late because they've attacked us. A prime example is Venezuela and Cuba. What happens is the Europeans, our enemies, their descendants, their system of capitalism is our enemy, and they have consistently learned from the experience. One of their first tactics when they wanted to overthrow a government was that they would make sure that the government wouldn't be able to maintain the needs of the people so that the people would suffer. Then they would go in. Nicaragua is an example. Back in the 80s when the Sandinistas and the Contra were going at it, they would make the government suffer through sanctions and embargoes and then drop leaflets so that the people would see that the government is not doing this because they're not getting the certain necessities that they need, because the United States are creating difficulties for them providing that by having the embargoes and the sanctions. They learned from their experience, so they kind of do it underhandedly now, where you don't see that they're giving. They're actually they have an embargo on Venezuela, but they're actually holding sanctions to pharmaceutical companies worldwide to give them medicines. It's like there's a sanction against Venezuela for receiving certain medical drugs. They have embargoes so that if anybody decides to go against it and want to bring it, you have to. It's an island. I mean, the South America, their only port is the Caribbean and the Gulf, the northern part of the country. So if you block that off with your military your Navy or whatever, then they can't receive the product. They'd have to receive it through another country. That costs money. That creates problems. Usually because of the embargo and the sanctions, other countries worldwide will join the side of our enemy, which is the United States and Europe. And then you find yourself having a underworld economy, which the government has to actually create laws against that, which is against the people. The people tend to go to other countries, and they are easily converted into capitalism because of the ability to create finances for themselves to take care of themselves. I'm in an industry right now in this area of the Mid-South that have a lot of Venezuelans coming over. They're coming over because they're suffering. They're not knowing that they're suffering because the United States is creating embargoes and sanctions. So they come over here. When they start making money, they've been fed into this capitalist system willingly. And then they are because they experience certain things here, they start believing certain things. We have to understand these people are baffling, cunning. They do things to attack us in our everyday lives, and we don't even know that we're creating a support system for the perpetual motion of this system. We don't see that. Then on top of that, you got people here, new Africans, that children are taught from pre-K to K to the end of high school. Some of them go back to get some BS, some more. I can't say the last word. They go get their BS, which is some bull, and then they go and get some more of the S, which is the MS, and then they think they know what they're talking about. They know what they're doing. Yeah, they do know what they're doing if they want to help perpetuate a capitalist system. They have no idea in many cases. I'm not talking about the brothers and sisters that Yera was talking, because they're exceptions to everything. But what I'm saying is that it's a system. It's systematic. You can't just break out and change the whole system you by yourself. You have to work. You have to organize. You have to organize the people, like Grandmaster Teacher always say. You probably every episode you'll hear Grandmaster Teacher talking about organization. We have to focus on the organization. We have to focus on the fact that what we need to do to free ourselves to have independence is what we need to do. It has nothing to do with any white people liking us, any white people allowing us to get grants for farms. It has nothing to do with that. They might make a few of us feel better for doing those things, but ultimately they want to keep us. They want us to remain in this system to perpetuate the capitalist system, which has to have a foundation of slaves. So you have to figure out a way to make the slaves want to stay in a system that's designed to oppress and exploit them. And if you continue to listen to their propaganda, that's what you'll have. But if you continue to listen to the Voices of New Afrika, we're going to get the word out. We're going to tell you the truth, because we're here to educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. And I yield.
No doubt. Anybody, to all the people out there watching, want to make sure y'all drop a like, hit that like button, drop a comment to let us know who you are, so we can converse and have a conversation back and forth with y'all. We've basically been talking about this international enemy, this global enemy that we are all facing, the same enemy that we are facing here in the United States of America. We've been facing overseas in Africa, in Asia, Latin America, so-called Latin America. It's the same enemy, the same struggle, the same system, and they might go from a different European or colonial powers. You might be colonized by friends, some people by bridges, by the United States, but it's the same system, and we need a collective united front in order to fight these individuals. And we're approaching the 1 hour mark, and we ain't gonna be on here too long. We got a lot of things going on, a lot of things we have to accomplish. Make sure y'all stay tuned, because like I always say, that this program and what we're doing at NABA and the New African Independence Movement is not just about talking to us, getting the word out and educating the uneducated. That is a part of it, but that's only a part of it. The other part is we got to take things to another level. We got to take things to the next level, and we got to get into the community, as my brother Joe Gonzalez always said, all boots laced and on the ground. So these things are extremely important if we want to collectively bring about this conversation into action, into something that is concrete, something into the material world. So stay tuned so you can always support the initiatives and the things that we got going on. We got a couple of things that are going on and things that are in the planning stages. Make sure y'all keep your ears and eyes open, because we got elections coming up, the national national and local elections for the Republic of New Afrika. That's going on this November. And pretty soon you're going to start hearing about the advertisement for Nation Day that's coming in. So if you have not had the opportunity to go to the last Nation Day, which was just a wonderful, spectacular event, make sure y'all save the date for Nation Day, March, I think it's March 29th through the 31st. And it's going to be in Columbus, Georgia this year. We're going to be hanging out with Comrade Bo Money down there doing his thing. Always good to hang out with that brother. He's the Minister of Information in the Republic of New Afrika. And all about doing the job of freeing the land and nation building, trying to bring about independent institutions that serve us and not exploit us. So, Grandma, before we get out of here, you got anything you want to say to the people?
Okay, yes. I think that when we talk about, we must not think that the capitalism is not going to fall. And so even when people from Venezuela or from Cuba or from any part of the Western Hemisphere move towards America, it is also bringing about the downfall of these neo-colonial states. And the masses of people will ultimately take power in places like Brazil, where we got the largest number of African people in the Western Hemisphere, and places like Colombia and places like Haiti. Even though we see chaos and confusion that's been perpetuated ultimately by the capitalist system, ultimately we will prevail. We will, as a result of our revolutionary educational process that we're talking about, because we already know that they're failing in the so-called educational system, because once they made concessions and the concessions are made, and then they take those concessions back, that limits their ability to miseducate our people, to get our people. So ultimately, everywhere we are, we're going to organize ourselves for power, so that we can have power over our own lives. And that's the whole essence of the whole thing of what we are talking about, because we're pro-liberation more than we are anything in terms of trying to organize our people, and we have confidence in our people. I have confidence in our people. I've seen our people rise up to the occasion and begin to topple the system. So it's only a matter of time that we're going to have the forces that are going to be able to liberate ourselves.
Comrade, you got anything you want to say to get out of here?
Yeah, just real short and sweet. Everything that we must do, we have to do.
There you go.
Okay. Everything we must do, we have to do. We will win. It's just a matter of time. But what we must understand is the people, that those small things that we think may not make a difference really do make a difference. And at some point, everybody doing those small things will make our progress grow exponentially. It's just a matter of science. It's just logic. So keep doing what you do, understanding that we will win. And no matter what happens in your lifetime, the struggle will grow exponentially. to the point where we are successful.
Definitely. Just to kind of follow up on your point, comrade. Things develop from the simple to the complex. Hey, reach yourself.
Oh.
Things develop from the simple to the complex. Man, you jump right back on. There you go. Things develop from the simple to the complex. So, as you said, continue to do, what you can. Don't think that your effort is not in vain, because a lot of small steps ultimately, if you continue to make them, you will get to your destination. So we don't get frustrated. We don't get upset, because we understand that this is a protracted struggle that we are engaged in. It's a protracted struggle, and when you pay close attention, you see the conditions slowly but surely changing. You see more and more people are waking up to the things that actually need to be done. You see the sport. I was looking at the Olympics the other day, and this sister, Shakira Richardson or something like that. She's known as the fastest woman in the world now. Last year she was banned from kicked out of the Olympics because she tested positive for marijuana. But this year she's in the World Games, or whichever particular games it is, on the world stage, and she's breaking records, doing all kind of great things. And I noticed the other day, they was trying to interview her, and all of the white reporters, the white countries, these colonized countries, were trying to interview her, and she just compared, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you, no thank you, and she went straight to the black interviewer, and she talked to them, and they asked her about how does it feel to be on the world stage doing what she's doing, and she says, well, I've seen the world be with me, and I see the world be against me, so I'm not worried about the world stage. I'm worried about people, about me, and people who look like me, and people that I represent. And now, that wasn't anything necessarily revolutionary or about independence, but it's just a small form of a small example of a mini rebellion against a sister. And it's just this energy of rebellion that's in the air, and it's not just in August, and it's not just here. It's kind of energy, and we have to capitalize on that. We have to educate people on that. We have to educate, like, this is the reason why this sister feel this way. On a small level of rebelling against, saying, I don't want to deal with these white nations, these white countries, these colonized countries, even though that's not how she said it. This feeling that the people know, although they might not have the political education to articulate it fully, to understand exactly what they are feeling, that there's something going on, there's something wrong with this system that is based on the exploitation of their people. They may not can articulate it in that way, but we feel that there's something going on. The people are ready. Like our grandmaster teacher always say, the people are always ready. The leadership gotta get in check. So let's make sure that we are doing our due diligence, and we are capitalizing on the mood of the people, on the energy of the people, of the spirit of the people, the spirit of rebellion, the spirit of revolution, the spirit of I want something to change, because we have to come to the people and we have to educate the people and say, this is why you wanted to change. And not only this is why you wanted to change, this is what you wanted to change into. Because you don't want that energy simply to just be misused by the oppressor, and simply allow them to more efficiently run the system of oppression. So I appreciate everybody for tuning in. Join us next week. We'll be here next Sunday and every Sunday after that. Join us tomorrow at the New African Perspective. And we love y'all. And we're going to leave y'all with our battle cry. And that is, free the land, free the land, free the land. It's always difficult for us to get there, because we got
we may have to do a little POW tribute at the end. They have to see a video of some of your creative ideas that you had going on.
Definitely. But we'll see y'all again next week, y'all. We love y'all. Be real.
I fight for land, independence, and for reparations. We gotta do for self-determination.
Being independent is a very, very good thing because it means that you don't have to be dependent, especially on people who don't like you. I mean, growing your own food, like teaching your own babies our real history, the real truth.
As a people, we are not grown unless we have independence. We are not grown as long as we living under another man's system, operating in his way of things, his laws, and his ordinances that support his rule, actually. So to me, it's not the importance of self-determination and independence. It is mandatory.
We could make a change, get